with all designs, be fluid, be flexible, move things around a little bit. So we have all these little plugs. So these are our native plants, and this is mostly how native plants come. They grow them in these really long tubes because they like to get their roots deep and down, and then they don't circle like you get in a traditional pot. So even though they're native and they're tough plants, it is going to be a bit of a challenge. Well, not a challenge. You're going to have to look after them for that first year to really get them well established because, you know, just like any other baby, they need a little TLC to begin with. Now, unfortunately, they're grown in a peat mix, and that everything is. There's no way around it. It's just what's available. And you can see the roots, it's a tiny little plant at the top, but look, the roots go from here to here, all the way down. And we want to be very careful not to disrupt the roots too much. But what happens when you grow in a soilless media, and then you take this little plug and put it into whatever native soil you have, the roots actually don't like to cross. So they will stick in this little plug unless we can somehow tickle them out. And so what we'll do is we'll just very carefully
at the bottom,
and a little bit on the side, depend how root bound they are. But you do this with any plant, native plant, anything you buy from a garden center, trees, shrubs, you name it. You have to get those roots a little bit free so that they can connect with the native soil. And so there. So we're just gently separating. We're not really losing many roots. And then what we're going to do is when you put that in, the roots will be flat. And then what I like to do is I water. Like I pour the stream of water all over here, and it washes a little bit more of the soil away so that the roots really can get out into the native, have good contact with the native soil. But because these are just tiny little plugs, they'll be really simple. The other thing I like to do is actually just peel some of this media off from around the top. Because the other thing that can happen is when we put it in the soil, we get it at the right depth, but then the soil settles and sometimes the top pokes through and that acts like a giant wick and it pulls moisture out. So I just like to kind of take it off from around the crown so that when I put it in, I can top it up a little bit and it's not really buried any more deeply than what it already was in its container. So that's kind of it. Just carefully separate them a little bit more so that we can wash some of that media out. So we have all these fine roots on the outside, but in the middle, that's kind of like a structural root. That's the one that you really want to kind of free. Yes. And the other ones can go off to the side. We're thinking meadow, right? So the predominantly is grass, and then we have, you know, the flowering plants spaced in between. So when you put your meadow together, it's your plan, and nature does it better. So you want to get the plants in place, and then they will sort themselves out. Some will seed, some will, you know, come and go, but they all kind of intermingle, and that's kind of what you're after, is just kind of to let it do its thing. But all of the plants will attract the pollinator. So most of the plants are actually the matrix and the ground layer. They're the ones that kind of cover the soil, and then you have the fillers, and then you have something really big and flashy. So for us, the geraniums will be the flashy ones, as will the asters later in the season. The lower plants, so we have lots of the grasses, and then we have the old man's whiskers, and we have some crocus. So even though they do flower, their purpose really is to carpet the ground and kind of cover it up. This is our golden currant. This is going to be 5 feet by 4 feet. So it's going to be a little squished in there, but it'll work. You can shear these. They use them as hedges all the time. So those little white roots are the hair roots. And then we just want to tickle it. And with a shrub, you got to be careful. So we're just going to tickle it, spread it out a little bit, just so those roots can go out. For any other shrub, or you want to make sure that you loosen the soil all around it, as well as down deep. And that's where the knife works really well, because you can really get down there and make sure that the roots can go straight down. We'll take our little plant. I'm not going to take the top off because there's lots of room and it's got a nice moss ball. We'll just stick it in, lay the roots out sideways, give it a really good drink to kind of make sure the roots have great contact with the soil. And then you just want to make sure that the very top of the root ball is covered. Not deeply, but just a little bit so that, you know, as the soil settles, it doesn't pop up. That's it. So now we have some smooth asters, and these are really pretty plants. Now, if you want, these guys can be quite aggressive. They're a clump former, but they seed a lot. And when you're choosing plants for your garden, you want to kind of make sure that they have a similar competitive strategy. So just like any other plant, some natives are diminutive and retiring, others are thugs. And you want to make sure that you plant the thugs together and not add diminutive ones in there. We have Rocky Mountain Fescue, which is a medium-sized native grass. It's about yay high. And you know, like all fescues, it kind of has plumy seed heads, cool season grass. Grasses tend to be very deeply rooted.
Okay.
So rough, these guys are a very fibrous root. So just tickle the outsides, rub them a bit to roughen them up, and that should be all we need. So the golden bean, or the buffalo bean, this is Thermopsis, this plant runs, but it's cool. And it's not run and take over the world. It runs and pops up here and there. It is now set seed and going dormant. So it is a really good filler. So you can just pop, you don't need a lot of these, you just pop them in and they will just kind of wander amongst everybody else. It's not tall, but it blooms fairly early and it just sort of fills in. So now we have some crocus. Now a lot of the prairie crocus actually go dormant. They do their thing, they bloom really early, they seed, and then they kind of disappear. So they're really good things to kind of poke in amongst other things that are going to sort of hide the hole after they've gone dormant. So these are our penstemons. Penstemons are fabulous flowers. There's many, many different kinds. Our native ones tend to be shorter. They love hot, dry, rocky, you name it. Like the crappiest soil, the better. The only thing that will kill them is poor draining soil or sitting in cold, wet clay in the spring. So they are excellent along sidewalks, driveways. If you got a really rocky, like an old driveway or something, love it. You want to have as many pollinating or flowering plants early in the spring that will take you into the late part of the fall. A lot of birds will come and eat the seeds. A lot of the insects, they use like juices and stuff, or the stems, and they'll nest in the stems for the winter, or they lay their eggs in the stem.
A perfect companion to a wildflower garden or a naturalized garden has to be a birdhouse. So I'm putting some roof felt in, and here again, it's because of the moisture content needed. What I'm using is what they call a roof tile. Literally come as a solid piece. And most of them are pre-measured to fit our roof. If you look for these carefully, they have this wonderful fabric on them that gradually rots away. And what I want to do is make sure that the roof is nice and solidly in there. And I use my sawtoothed pruning saw. And I'm going to cut 2 pieces. It doesn't destroy the root ball, and it makes it fit quite nicely in the top. This isn't a long process, it's just getting the roof tile. And then I have to take and fill in this piece. And this is about the same width as what we did break off. And literally use a sawing motion. Don't cut straight across and in one motion, saw it off, or you will destroy the piece you're trying to get evenly out of there. And at this point, if I can't make it fit that way, I just break pieces off and I fill it in, and it doesn't hurt to just push it in. But doesn't that look nice? I think it looks great. And you know what, just for the heck of it, because I do want to attract certain birds to this birdhouse, I'm going to tuck a couple of these pine cones in just to give it more substance. And then you just need to water it about every 2 weeks and it should be fine. When it starts to get into the fall and the light is less, they do just really well with once every 3 or 4 weeks. And that's it for my green roof.
You just want to make sure that you have something there, and all flowering kind of at the same time. So they're not going to come in for one plant flowering. They want to come in and they want a variety of things. And then if you're, you know, there's some plants are very specific to a particular butterfly or insect. So then you have to make sure you have the flowering plant that they like, but also the one that they lay their eggs on. And that does require a little bit of research. The other thing you have to be careful of too is I have seen lots of videos where they go and plant. They take all their little plugs, they lay them all out, and then they go around and dig the hole and put them in. Those tiny little roots on the outside, those are the hair roots. Those are very, very fragile, and that's how the plant accesses nutrients. It takes nothing to kill them, and then the plant has to start from scratch. So best dig your holes. There's a whole arrangement you can do. Like you can dig your holes, you can water them in. I like to dig the holes, plop the plant in, water it, cover it. When you are choosing your plants, not all native plants make great garden plants. So be very careful what you choose, because some of them are really, really aggressive and they'll take over to the deficit of everybody else. And you also want to make sure that they do not want lush, rich soil. So no compost. You don't want to amend that soil in any way. You want to plant them in your native soil and get them adapted in that. With native plants, usually you only have to water for the first couple of weeks. Get them really, really well established, and after that you kind of back off, because the idea is you want those roots to go deep down, to spread out. If you baby them too much, chances are you'll rot them. So you just, and this depends on, today we're doing all sun plants. If you had plants in the shade, you would have to adjust it a little more, or plants in different environments. But these guys are all really tough. So water them really well for the first couple of weeks, and then after that, they're on their own.